Welcome back. All right, so this is the penultimate of the season previews, as now I just have Calgary left after this one. So we're talking about the St. Louis Blues, and yes, I've opted for the logo for the second reverse retro and to wear the first reverse retro, because why not? So the St. Louis Blues had a tough season last year. They finished 37, 38, and 7 for 23rd overall. And in the offseason, the moves made would suggest this team believes they can bounce back. And there's really a chance that they do bounce back. They're going to need some numbers to turn in their direction. Now, the 3.17 goals scored per game, not bad, right around league average there. The goals against has to come down, 3.63. And whether you're of the belief that it's the goaltending, whether you're of the belief it's the defense, or if you want to believe it's both, whatever the case may be, they need to figure it out this year. So if you believe Bennington's a great goaltender just behind crappy defense, all right. If you believe that Bennington's part of the problem, all right. But again, they have to figure that out this year, because after 2 years, it becomes a pattern. So they need to make sure it doesn't become a pattern. Now, 19.3% on the power play. They need to improve that number. Their penalty kill was abysmal. Their penalty kill was right down there with Vancouver's for a lot of the season, 72.4%, which is unusual to me anyways for a team coached by Craig Berube, who is as tough as nails. And yeah, so I do expect that number to get better. We'll see, though, right? So the last time they made the playoffs, of course, 2022. That was also the last time they won a round. The last time they won the Stanley Cup, the only time they won the Stanley Cup, 2019. And now we're 4 years out from that Cup win, and that's right around where fans are like, okay, I like that feeling with that Stanley Cup. Can we have that back now? So this is a team that does not have cap space, according to Cap Friendly, $293,571. So they don't have the cap money in order to improve things, but two keystones are signed for a long time, so we'll see how those two keystone players do. Starting with Kyrou, 79 games, 37 goals, 36 assists, 73 points. And people have pointed out his defensive numbers and how poor his defensive numbers were. I thought he had an up and down year. I'm not going to say it was a great year. I think he can bounce back. Buchnevich, 63 games, 26 goals, 41 assists, 67 points. Staying healthy is the key for Buchnevich. If he can play 75-plus games, that should improve their chances. Robert Thomas, 73 games, 18 goals, 47 assists, 65 points. An elite passer, Thomas. They could use probably a few more goals from him. And again, 63 points in 65 points in 73 games isn't bad. But considering the contracts that Kyrou and Thomas have, this is where they're supposed to start taking those next steps. Braden Shen, 82 games, 21 goals, 44 assists, 65 points. Pretty consistent point totals from Braden Shen. And Falk, 82 games, 11 goals, 39 assists, 50 points. One question mark, and he's not on the board, Torrey Krug. So in the offseason, they tried moving Krug to Philadelphia. He said no. There was speculation maybe Krug would get traded elsewhere. During the season, Krug's ice time got cut back, and there's some inconsistencies in his game. Hey, I'm not going to pretend Krug's great 5-on-5 defensively. That's something I remember from Boston. Maybe trading him back to Boston could help, but I don't know how you'd make that trade work. But I do think if Krug returned to Boston, he'd get some of his game back. And I know there's Boston fans probably waving their hands going, no. Again, the 5-on-5 defense, I understand, is a bit of an issue, but with the right other defenseman playing with him, it can really help to cover up for that. So you just need a really good defensive defenseman, and then Krug can go out and play his game. I understand it's kind of a scary game at times, though. Now, the goaltending, as previously mentioned, Bennington played 61 games, which I thought was too much. I thought they overplayed him. He ends up 27, 27, and 6 with an .894 save percentage. Part of the reason they overplayed him, Greiss didn't have a great season. 21 games, 7 and 10 record, .896 save percentage. He is retired. Hofer comes in as the favorite to win the backup job. He has 6 games last season, 3-1-1 record, .905 save percentage. I liked Hofer and what I saw of him. Again, it's a small sample size, but yeah, he looked pretty good. So the hits leader amongst returning players, Braden Shen with 140. Blocked shots, Parayko 144. And a lot of people talk about Parayko and his contract. And again, they were trying to move that contract and didn't get it done. But it would appear that if they do try to move Parayko, there is the chance that contract gets moved. Kyrou led the way in posts. He hit 6 posts. So, again, considering some of the leaders when it comes to hitting the post in the league, 6 isn't bad. He had a 37-goal season, so I do think Kyrou can hit 40. For the next one on this team, I went with the first-round draft pick this year, Dvorsky. The 2023 draft seen as a very deep draft. Dvorsky seen as an excellent forward. One of those forwards that's almost NHL ready coming right out of the draft. At least that's what the scouts believe. So we'll see if that is in fact the case. For the fantasy sleeper, I went with Hofer. Why? Because I do think that Binnington got overplayed. I think if you want Binnington to be at his best, he should be playing about 50 games. So that would give Hofer about 32. And if St. Louis can bounce back from last year, Hofer might be good for, say, in those 32 games, he could win 16 or 17. So I could see that, and we'll see whether or not Hofer does play that many games. And of course, if they have a good year, he could win 20 plus, right? So I do think that Hofer's going to play a bunch as they try to figure out what the plan is going forward in net. The MVP, if this team's going to do anything, it has to be Kyrou. So Kyrou has to bounce back from a down year and has to show, hey, I'm still, the big guy for the future, and don't you guys worry about anything. I got this under control. He needs to show that. There are veterans on this team who can lead on and off the ice, but Kyrou needs to lead in points, and he needs to be the MVP. Again, if this team's going to get back above 500 and threaten for a playoff spot. So their schedule is not busy during October. They have 6 games, 3 home and 3 away. It's busy during November. They have 15 games, 7 home and 8 away. So it's a busy schedule in November, relatively light schedule in October. And again, it's pretty even in terms of home and away. So I wouldn't say it's a brutal schedule. There's some back-to-backs in there, of course, but I wouldn't say it's an overly difficult schedule. They absolutely could bounce back. That schedule could help a little bit. The channel vote, a little pessimistic on their chances of moving up. So 2% of the channel vote said first or second for St. Louis. 19% said third or fourth. 60% said fifth or sixth. 18% said seventh or eighth. So 78% of the vote said that St. Louis will finish fifth or lower in the division. And honestly, I totally get why people feel that way. The thing is, and the reason why you kind of have to put an asterisk with that is we all thought they were going to stay in the top 4 this past season, and it didn't happen. So that recency bias is a thing. It absolutely is there. I've talked about it many times over, and I think it shows up in that as well, which it's just that's how we are. We look at last season, which just ended a few months ago, and say, well, clearly this team's still excellent, and that team's still not very good, and the following season's completely different, and then we're surprised. So exits of note, Grice leaves, as mentioned. He retired. Tyler Pitlick, Josh Levo, Logan Brown gone as well. Logan Brown, a little bit of a surprise because he had a really good boost to his game when he first arrived in St. Louis, and it looked like, with his dad, Jeff Brown, that this was going to be a nice St. Louis tie-in, and it just wasn't sustainable. So Brown moves on. The additions, Mackenzie McEachern returns, so he, of course, was a Blue before. Kevin Hayes comes over from Philly, and Sundqvist returns as well. So they get Blais back, McEachern, Sundqvist. Of course, Blais came back at the deadline last season in the Tarasenko trade. And yeah, I mean, they've got some good young forwards. They've got some good bottom 6 forwards there as well. There is the potential for this team to turn it around. If they get off to a slow start, we'll see what they end up doing. So this is only the second time they've missed the playoffs since 2012. This has been a pretty solid, reliable playoff team. And again, that 2019 Stanley Cup finally showed that St. Louis could get over the hump. They fell 27 points from where they were in 2021, 2022. And again, I would expect a little bit of a bounce back. The thing with a little bit, though, I say that because, they did lose Ryan O'Reilly last year. There are definitely players that have left this team that hurt. But I do think that there's some organizational depth here to make up for it. We'll have to see how it turns out. This is the first sub-500 season the team has had since 2007-2008. Now, it's only one game below 500. They did get 81 points, but it is worthy of note that this is their worst points percentage in 15 years. And again, it just kind of felt like everything conspired against them from early on in the season. Armstrong's been the GM since July the 1st of 2010. I don't get the feeling there's any danger to his job at this point. I think that Stanley Cup win earns him a lot of leeway with management and likely with fans as well. Craig Berube's entering his 5th full season behind the bench. I don't get the feeling there's any danger to his job either. So it's unusual to see a team go through a down year like this and not see heat on the coach or on the GM, but I don't think there's any reason to be concerned yet. However, if the moves made don't work out, and especially if Hayes doesn't live up to his advanced billing coming in, then you could see the start of some calls for Doug Armstrong to be out as GM. It's just that's the way fans and media tend to work. But we'll see. Because again, I think that Cup win in 2019 earned a lot of good feelings from the fans in St. Louis, media as well. So we'll see how far that extends. So when we talk about UFAs, this team has a couple of pending UFAs to keep an eye on if this team does fall out of the race. Kapanen and Jacob Vrana. Jacob Vrana, absolutely. And if you want to have him as a fantasy sleeper, you can. I just don't know how much I trust Vrana being able to play a full season. Injuries are always going to be a thing with Vrana. Consistency always a thing as well. But if this team does fall out, I could see Vrana and Kapanen being two examples of guys who end up on the trade market and could bring them back something decent anyways. But there isn't really a lot here when you're looking at guys who are on expiring contracts that could bring back a lot for St. Louis. If I was the Blues, I wouldn't be trading first-round draft picks. I wouldn't be trading young players either. Jake Neighbors is a pretty solid player as well who could end up moving up the lineup this year. We shall see. He's a hard worker, and I think he has a little more talent than he showed so far at the NHL level. So we'll find out this season whether or not that's the case. But there's a good team here, but is there a team here that's able to get above the playoff line? And that's the question that I have, and I'm not sure that there is, but they surprised me by missing the playoffs. Maybe they surprised me by making the playoffs this year. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.